When I was buying a wedding gift for my daughter, an unknown number sent a chilling message. Don't go to the wedding, run. I called the number back, and what I heard shocked me and turned everything upside down. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The diamond earrings caught the light perfectly under the jeweler's loupe. I adjusted the magnification, studying each facet with the same intensity I'd once applied to construction blueprints. $15,000 was substantial, even for me. But Leona deserved something extraordinary for her wedding day. These earrings will be perfect for such a special occasion as a wedding, the salesperson said, her manicured fingers adjusting the velvet display. The woman had been patient with my examination, understanding that men of my generation approach such purchases methodically. Yes, my daughter's wedding. I want everything to be perfect. The words carried more weight than I intended. After losing Margaret 10 years ago, moments like these reminded me how much I wanted to get right. Leona had been through enough disappointments in her relationships. This time felt different with Carl. The boutique's classical music created a cocoon of refinement around us. Other customers moved quietly between displays, their voices hushed in reverence for the luxury surrounding them. I'd built Welch materials from nothing, and moments like this validated every difficult decision, every missed dinner, every weekend spent at construction sites instead of home. My phone buzzed against my chest pocket. I glanced at it absently, expecting another email about concrete deliveries or permit approvals. The message made my hands freeze above the jewelry case. Don't go to the wedding. Run. The number was unfamiliar. I read the message again, then a third time. My fingers tightened around the phone's edges. The diamonds blurred as my focus shifted entirely to the screen's harsh blue glow. Sir, is everything all right? You look quite pale. The salesperson's voice seemed to come from underwater. Her concerned expression penetrated my confusion. I forced my breathing to steady. Just wedding nerves, I suppose. The lie came easily, a businessman's reflex to maintain composure under pressure. But inside, questions multiplied like cracks in concrete under freeze-thaw cycles. Who could write something like this? And where did they get this number? I dialed the mysterious number. The phone rang endlessly, each tone amplifying my anxiety. No voicemail, no answer, just the mechanical repetition of connection attempts. I tried again immediately, still nothing. The salesperson waited patiently while I completed the transaction. My signature on the credit card receipt looked shaky, uncertain. The gold pen felt foreign in my trembling fingers. She wrapped the earrings in tissue paper with practiced efficiency, placing them in the iconic Tiffany box with its perfect bow. I hope your daughter loves them, she said, handing me the small shopping bag. She will. The response was automatic. My thoughts remained fixed on the message, analyzing its implications like a structural engineer examining foundation problems. Someone knew about the wedding. Someone wanted me afraid. I walked toward the mall's main corridor, clutching the Tiffany bag against my side. Other shoppers moved around me in blissful ignorance while I scanned faces, searching for threats I couldn't identify. The Mall of America's crowds, usually comforting in their anonymity, now felt oppressive. Every stranger could be watching. Every phone could be documenting my movements. The gift that had given me such satisfaction moments ago now felt like evidence of my vulnerability. Someone knew my plans, my schedule, even my phone number. They wanted me to run from my daughter's wedding. I needed coffee. I needed time to think. The small cafe near the food court beckoned with its promise of normalcy and caffeine. Perhaps in the familiar ritual of ordering and sitting, I could make sense of this disruption to my carefully ordered world. The coffee grew cold while I stirred it obsessively, watching the cream swirl in patterns that reminded me of concrete mixers. The Tiffany bag sat on the table beside my elbow, its presence both reassuring and mocking. $15,000 for earrings, and now someone was telling me not to give them to my daughter. Families occupied nearby tables, their children's laughter creating a soundtrack of normalcy I couldn't access. My phone lay face up on the table, its dark screen reflecting my anxious face. I'd checked it 17 times in the past hour, willing it to ring so I could demand answers from whoever had shattered my peaceful afternoon. The second buzz made me jump. Another message from the same unknown number. I'll explain everything later, but don't go home today. Trust me. My logical mind rebelled against following instructions from a stranger. 68 years of business experience had taught me to verify sources, demand credentials, require proof before making decisions. But something deeper, an instinct I'd learned to trust during decades of construction negotiations, whispered that I should listen. I dialed the number again. The endless ringing mocked my desperation for answers. Whoever was sending these messages had no intention of immediate communication. They were controlling the timing, forcing me to react rather than respond strategically. "Another coffee, sir?" The young server appeared at my elbow, pot in hand, concern creasing her features. "Make it a double shot." The caffeine wouldn't help my nerves, but the familiar routine of ordering provided temporary anchor in the chaos of uncertainty. My reflection in the cafe window showed a man I barely recognized. The confident businessman who'd entered Tiffany & Co. 2 hours ago had been replaced by someone hunched over a phone, jumping at electronic sounds. Margaret used to tease me about my need to control every variable in my environment. Now, variables were controlling me. The Lincoln Navigator sat in the parking garage 3 levels down. I could drive home to my house in Minnetonka, pour myself a proper whiskey, and dismiss these messages as pranks or wrong numbers. Leona's wedding was tomorrow evening. I had final preparations to oversee, vendors to confirm, a father of the bride's speech to review one last time. Instead, I found myself dialing the Hilton Minneapolis downtown. "I need a room for one night. Yes, for today." The reservation agent's efficiency impressed me. Within minutes, I had confirmation for room 815, a business-class accommodation with city views and high-speed internet. The decision felt both impulsive and inevitable. Something about that voice in my head, the one that had guided me through profitable real estate investments and away from problematic partnerships, insisted that trusting these mysterious warnings was the right choice. I deliberately avoided calling Leona or Carl. Worrying them before I understood the situation would only create additional chaos. Better to spend one night in a hotel, gather information, and approach tomorrow's wedding with clarity rather than confusion. The drive downtown took 37 minutes through Friday afternoon traffic. I kept checking my rearview mirror, though I wouldn't have recognized surveillance if it existed. Construction sites and office buildings blurred past while I replayed the day's events, searching for patterns or explanations that remained frustratingly elusive. The hotel's valet took my keys with professional discretion. The lobby's marble floors and crystal chandeliers reminded me of the Tiffany store, another environment where money purchased comfort and service. I checked in using my credit card, accepted the key card, and rode the elevator to the 8th floor in silence. Room 815 felt enormous and sterile. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the Minneapolis skyline, but the familiar landmarks provided no comfort. I unpacked my emergency overnight bag, hanging my spare suit in the closet with mechanical precision. The hotel room's silence pressed against my eardrums like deep water. I'd ordered room service twice, watched 3 news programs, and taken a shower that lasted 43 minutes. Nothing distracted me from the phone sitting on the nightstand, its screen dark and accusatory. 7 attempts to call the mysterious number had yielded nothing but endless ringing. Whoever was behind these warnings controlled our communication completely. They would contact me when they chose, not when I demanded answers. The steak arrived perfectly cooked, accompanied by a bottle of 18-year-old Macallan that cost more than most people earned in a week. I signed the bill mechanically, tipping the room service waiter enough to ensure he wouldn't remember me as anything other than generous. "Just leave it on the table, thank you." My voice sounded hollow in the spacious room. The waiter's departure left me alone with my thoughts and growing paranoia. Outside the windows, Minneapolis glittered with Friday night energy. Couples walked hand in hand toward restaurants and theaters, living normal lives unburdened by cryptic warnings and unexplained fears. I envied their ignorance while nursing my whiskey, watching traffic patterns 8 floors below. The wedding was less than 20 hours away. Leona would expect me at the venue by noon for photographs and final preparations. The banquet hall on the Mississippi River had cost me $47,000, not including flowers, music, or catering. Everything was arranged, confirmed, and paid for. Yet, someone wanted me to run from it all. My phone showed 11:47 p.m. when I attempted my 8th call to the mysterious number. The familiar pattern of unanswered rings had become almost meditative, a ritual of frustration I repeated every hour like clockwork. At 11:50 p.m., the phone rang. I answered on the first ring, my heart hammering against my ribs. Hello? Arthur? This is Henry Burke. Sorry for the mystery, but I had to be certain. The voice hit me like recognition lightning. Henry Burke, my former business partner, the man I'd trusted with half my company until his gambling addiction destroyed our partnership 8 years ago. We'd parted ways acrimoniously, lawyers mediating the dissolution of what had once been genuine friendship. Henry, after 8 years, what's happening? The questions tumbled out before I could control them. Relief at finally having answers competed with confusion about why Henry had contacted me through anonymous messages. Today I was at Lawyer Stevens's office for my aunt's estate matter. Henry's voice carried the weight of someone delivering terrible news. Arthur, I overheard something about your daughter's wedding, about you. The whiskey glass trembled in my free hand. Stevens was a prominent Minneapolis attorney, the kind who handled wealthy families' legal affairs with discretion and efficiency. What could Henry have overheard that warranted cryptic warnings and hotel room isolation? What did you hear? The question emerged as barely more than a whisper. Not over the phone, too dangerous. Meet me tomorrow morning at the Guthrie Theater, the bridge overlooking the river, 10 o'clock. Come alone. And Arthur? Henry's paws stretched uncomfortably. Bring everything important. Papers, passwords, anything you'd need if you couldn't go home for a while. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone's blank screen, my reflection distorted in its dark surface. Outside, Minneapolis continued its Friday night celebrations while I sat in an expensive hotel room, contemplating the destruction of everything I'd built. Tomorrow was supposed to be Leona's wedding day. Instead, it might be the day I learned why someone wanted me to disappear. The phone's weight felt enormous in my grip, as Henry's voice echoed through the hotel room's silence. 8 years of separation melted away, leaving only the urgency in his tone and the dread building in my chest. I stood up from the bed, pacing toward the window where Minneapolis sparkled below like scattered diamonds. Henry, what exactly did you overhear? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. The businessman in me needed facts, specifics, evidence before accepting what my instincts already feared. I heard her saying, "The old man barely leaves the house anyway. We'll find witnesses about memory problems." Henry's words struck like hammer blows. Arthur, your daughter was discussing guardianship procedures with Stevens. She mentioned having you declared incompetent after the wedding. That's impossible. My Leona would never... The protest died in my throat. I grabbed the hotel notepad and pen, my hands shaking as I wrote down Henry's exact words. The businessman's reflex to document everything kicked in automatically. I wish I was wrong, but I sat in the waiting room for 40 minutes. She and that fiancé of hers discussed it in detail. Henry's voice dropped lower. Carl kept talking about the company's value, asking about business transfer procedures, something about moving assets before the competency hearing. The notepad slipped from my fingers. I sank into the desk chair, my legs suddenly unable to support my weight. Room 815's luxury surroundings blurred as I processed the implications. My daughter. My own daughter was planning to steal my life's work. What else did they say? The question came out as a whisper. Arthur, I wouldn't call if I wasn't certain. Your daughter is planning to sell your business. Henry's paws stretched uncomfortably. I saw them with legal documents. This isn't just talk, Arthur. They have a timeline. I stood again, walked to the window, pressed my palm against the cool glass. The city below continued its Friday night celebrations while my world collapsed floor by floor. How could I have been so blind? Every concerned comment about my forgetfulness, every suggestion that I seemed tired, every offer to help with the business suddenly revealed itself as preparation for this moment. Thank you for warning me. The words felt inadequate. Henry, I know we ended badly, but maybe old partners should still look out for each other, he interrupted. We had our problems, but I never forgot what you did for me early on. You gave me a chance when nobody else would. I poured a double whiskey with trembling hands, the Macallan burning my throat as memories cascaded through my mind. Leona asking about insurance policies last Christmas. Carl's frequent questions about company valuation. Their recent conversations about my declining health, despite my excellent physical condition. They mentioned having medical evaluations scheduled, Henry continued. Said something about Stevens knowing the right doctors, ones who would cooperate with the right diagnosis. The glass shattered against the hotel room's marble floor. I stared at the amber liquid spreading across expensive stone, my hands shaking uncontrollably. They had it all planned. The wedding was just a celebration before destroying my life. Henry, I need to know everything, every word you heard. For the next 20 minutes, Henry recounted the conversation with devastating precision. Legal documents were already prepared. Medical professionals had been contacted. Financial advisors were standing by to liquidate assets. My daughter and her fiancé had orchestrated a comprehensive plan to steal everything I'd built over 40 years. I filled 3 pages with notes, documenting every detail like preparing for the most important business negotiation of my life, because that's exactly what this was, a fight for my company, my independence, my very identity. Arthur, there's something else. Henry's voice carried new weight. They mentioned moving quickly after the honeymoon, something about you having an episode at the wedding reception, becoming confused or agitated. They plan to use that as evidence. The hotel room felt like a trap. Tomorrow evening, I was supposed to walk Leona down the aisle, smile for photographs, give a heartfelt father of the bride speech. Instead, I would be participating in the setup for my own destruction. I set down the phone and stared at my reflection in the dark window. A 70-year-old man looked back, but behind those eyes burned the same determination that had built Welch Materials from nothing. They wanted to destroy Arthur Welch. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The broken glass crunched under my shoes as I paced the hotel room, my notepad filled with Henry's devastating revelations. Sleep was impossible. My mind raced through 40 years of memories, re-examining every interaction with Leona and Carl through this new lens of betrayal. My phone's photo gallery became a catalog of evidence I'd been too blind to see. Last Christmas dinner, there was Carl casually asking about the company's insurance policies. Leona's birthday party in March, she'd mentioned my forgetful moments to 3 different relatives. Every family gathering now revealed itself as intelligence gathering. The digital clock showed 2:17 a.m. when I scrolled to a photo from Easter dinner. Leona was whispering something to Carl while I carved the ham, both of them looking at me with expressions I'd interpreted as concern. Now I recognize them as calculation. How could I have been so blind? Carl always asked about the company's value, the real estate holdings, the machinery worth. Leona lately mentioned my forgetful moments so often I'd started wondering if I really was declining. Every casual comment about retirement, every suggestion that I seemed tired, every offer to help with business decisions. It was all preparation. I grabbed a fresh piece of hotel stationery and began documenting patterns. Carl's questions about company insurance last December, Leona's comments about my confusion during their engagement party, their frequent suggestions that I should consider slowing down, maybe think about transferring some responsibilities. The whiskey helped steady my hands as I wrote. Each revelation felt like discovering termites in a foundation I'd thought was solid. They'd been systematically undermining my credibility for months, maybe years, preparing witnesses for their eventual competency challenge. At 4:33 a.m., I found the photograph that made everything crystal clear. Leona and Carl at my birthday party 2 months ago, both looking at their phones while I opened presents. In the background, barely visible, was a business card on the coffee table, Stevens' law firm. They'd been planning this since before they announced their engagement. Dawn light crept through the hotel windows as I reviewed my notes, 23 instances of suspicious behavior, 14 questions about company finances, 7 comments about my supposed memory problems. The pattern was undeniable once you knew what to look for. Maybe I really had started seeming like a burden to them. The doubt crept in despite the evidence. Carl was young, ambitious, probably saw an old man standing between him and financial security. Leona had always been practical, perhaps too practical. When had love for her father become an obstacle to overcome? Every family dinner, every casual question about retirement, every concerned look. It was all preparation for today's revelation. They'd turned my own daughter into an executioner, and she'd accepted the role willingly. The phone rang at 6:18 a.m. Room service, confirming my breakfast order. Coffee, eggs, Benedict, fresh fruit. The normalcy of the conversation felt surreal against the backdrop of family betrayal. I'd eaten thousands of business breakfasts over 4 decades, but this morning I was preparing for war against my own blood. I showered methodically, choosing my most conservative business suit. Today required every advantage, including the psychological armor of professional appearance. In the mirror, I saw not a vulnerable old man, but a seasoned negotiator preparing for the most important deal of his life. The checkout process took 8 minutes. I paid cash for incidentals, maintaining financial discretion. No credit card trails for Henry's warnings or my defensive preparations. If Leona and Carl were tracking my movements, they'd find gaps. Downtown Minneapolis was awakening as I drove towards Stevens's office building. Early commuters filled coffee shops and lobbies, beginning another ordinary Friday. None of them knew that Arthur Welch was driving toward confirmation of his daughter's betrayal. The elevator to Stevens' law firm rose smoothly past 14 floors of Minneapolis's professional elite. I'd been in this building dozens of times over the years, negotiating contracts and reviewing legal documents. Today felt different. Today I was an investigator seeking evidence of my own destruction. Stevens' receptionist recognized me immediately. "Mr. Welch, how nice to see you. Are you here for the Jacobson contract review?" "Actually, I'd like to speak with Robert about my will." I kept my voice casual, businesslike. "And I'm curious about some other legal matters my daughter mentioned." The waiting room's leather chairs and mahogany tables exuded expensive competence. Financial magazines fanned across side tables, their headlines about market trends and investment strategies. I'd built my wealth following advice from publications like these. Now I was fighting to keep it from my own family. "Arthur, wonderful to see you." Robert Stevens emerged from his office, hand extended in professional greeting. Tall, distinguished, silver-haired. The kind of lawyer wealthy Minneapolis families trusted with their most sensitive affairs. His office overlooked the Mississippi River, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the same waterway where tomorrow's wedding reception was scheduled. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Robert, I want to review my will. And who else has been asking you similar questions?" I settled into the chair across from his desk, adopting the casual tone of friendly curiosity. Stevens paused, his professional smile flickering slightly. "Well, your daughter was interested in guardianship procedures, said she was worried about your health, wanted to understand the legal options if—" "I see. What documents did she request?" The question came out sharper than intended. I softened my tone. "She mentioned something about protective measures, forms for incompetency declaration, requirements for medical evaluations." Stevens pulled a file from his desk drawer. She seemed very thorough about understanding the process. My hands remained steady as I accepted the photocopied documents, page after page of legal procedures for stripping someone of their independence, medical evaluation requirements, asset transfer protocols, guardianship appointment processes. It was a complete roadmap for destroying someone's life. How thorough. She's always been detail-oriented. The comment masked my horror at seeing the plan laid out so systematically. "Did she say anything about timing?" Stevens hesitated, clearly uncomfortable discussing one client with another, even family. "She mentioned wanting to understand the process thoroughly before any medical decline became apparent." Translation: before they manufactured evidence of my incompetence. "And Carl, was he part of these discussions?" "Your daughter's fiancé had many questions about business transfer procedures, asset protection during legal proceedings." Stevens flipped through his notes. He seemed quite knowledgeable about corporate valuation methods. The room felt arctic despite the morning sunlight streaming through windows. They'd done their homework. Legal procedures, medical requirements, business valuation, asset protection. Every aspect of their theft had been researched and prepared. "Robert, I'd like copies of everything related to guardianship law. For my own understanding, of course." I pulled out my wallet, extracting $500 bills. "And I'd prefer to handle this transaction privately." Stevens accepted the cash without comment, making photocopies of relevant statutes and procedures. Professional discretion was part of his service, especially when paid in untraceable currency. 20 minutes later, I walked toward the parking garage with a manila envelope full of evidence, legal documents outlining exactly how my daughter planned to steal my life's work, medical evaluation procedures they'd used to declare me incompetent, asset transfer protocols for liquidating Welch materials. The Lincoln Navigator's engine purred to life as I sat in the parking structure, reading through the papers one more time. Everything Henry had told me was confirmed in black and white. My daughter and her fiancé had orchestrated a comprehensive plan to destroy me, and they'd scheduled it to begin immediately after their honeymoon. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed Arthur Welch would be a passive victim. They had no idea that the man who'd built a construction empire from nothing was about to remind them exactly what he was capable of when threatened. The familiar weight of my house keys felt foreign as I unlocked the front door at exactly noon. The manila envelope containing Stephen's documents remained hidden in my briefcase, alongside the Tiffany bag that had started this nightmare 20 hours ago. I hung my jacket on the designated hook with deliberate normalcy, setting my briefcase beside the hall table. "Dad, where were you? We were worried. You didn't answer your calls." Leona rushed from the kitchen, her face a perfect mask of concern. Behind her, Carl emerged more slowly, his eyes studying my face for signs of confusion or weakness. "I went to a hotel. Couldn't sleep at home, before the wedding." I let my voice trail off, projecting mild embarrassment rather than the cold rage burning in my chest. "Sometimes the house feels too quiet since your mother passed." Carl's eyes sharpened. "That's somewhat unusual, Arthur. Maybe you should talk to a doctor about sleep problems." His tone carried practiced sympathy, but I caught the calculating gleam beneath. "Yes, Dad, we're concerned about you. Lately you seem forgetful." Leona touched my arm with manufactured tenderness. "You left your phone here. We tried calling all night." I patted my pockets with exaggerated confusion. "Did I? How silly of me." The performance required every ounce of my business experience. Play the part they expected while gathering intelligence for my counterattack. "Have either of you seen my keys? I could have sworn I put them." I made a show of checking the hall table, my jacket pockets, even looking under magazines. The keys were in my hand the entire time. Carl and Leona exchanged the kind of significant look that confirmed everything Henry had told me. They were documenting my episodes for future medical evaluations. "Right here, Dad." Leona pointed to the obvious location on the counter. "You set them down when you came in." "Of course." "Thank you, sweetheart." I smiled gratefully while my mind cataloged their reactions. Carl had pulled out his phone, probably making notes about my supposed confusion. Leona was watching my hands for tremors, my eyes for signs of disorientation. I moved to the kitchen and began my usual tea ritual, the familiar motions providing cover while I listened to their whispered conversation near the living room entrance. "Getting worse," Carl murmured. "The evaluation next week will confirm it," Leona replied. "Good thing we have Stephen's paperwork ready." They had already scheduled my mental competency evaluation. The trap was closing faster than I'd imagined. "Dad, why don't you sit down? You look tired." Leona guided me toward my favorite armchair like I was an invalid. "Carl and I can handle the wedding preparations." "Actually, I wanted to discuss something important." I settled into the chair, adopting the tone of a man seeking advice from younger, more capable family members. "I've been thinking about the company lately. What will happen when I'm too old to manage everything?" Both of them leaned forward with predatory interest. "Don't worry about that now, Arthur." Carl's voice carried false reassurance. "We'll help you when the time comes. But what if something happens to me? What if I become unable to make decisions?" I let vulnerability creep into my voice. "I trust both of you completely, but I worry about the complexity of the business." "Dad, you don't need to worry about any of that." Leona's eyes gleamed with poorly concealed excitement. "Carl has been studying your contracts, your client relationships. We understand the business better than you think." "Really? You've studied my contracts?" I feigned surprise while mentally recording her admission. "That's very thoughtful, but some of those arrangements are quite complex." "Actually, I've identified several opportunities for consolidation," Carl interrupted. "Your company could be much more profitable with proper management. I even know potential buyers who are ready to pay exceptional prices." The audacity was breathtaking. They were so confident in their plan that Carl was openly discussing selling my life's work. I sipped my tea and nodded thoughtfully, playing the role of an aging businessman grateful for young expertise. My phone buzzed with a text message, Both Leona and Carl watched intently as I fumbled with the device, deliberately holding it at the wrong angle and squinting at the screen. "Having trouble reading it, Dad?" Leona asked with false concern. "These screens are so small." I handed her the phone. "Could you tell me what it says?" The message was from Henry. "Everything okay? Stay strong." "Just a spam message," Leona lied smoothly, deleting the text before handing back my phone. They were already controlling my communications. I stood slowly, stretching my back with theatrical discomfort. "I think I'll rest before tonight's rehearsal dinner. This has been an exhausting day." "Good idea, Dad. You need your strength for tomorrow." Leona kissed my cheek while Carl watched from across the room, probably timing how long my confusion episodes lasted. I walked toward my study, my footsteps deliberately unsteady. Behind me, I heard them begin another whispered conference about my declining condition and their accelerated timeline. The study door closed with a soft click, finally giving me sanctuary to drop the performance. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, but this time it was rage, not confusion, that made them tremble. The study's familiar walls provided temporary refuge from my performance of decline. I activated my phone's recording app, testing the audio quality by tapping the desk and whispering test phrases. Clear sound, no distortion, perfect for capturing confessions. My business instincts took over as I planned the evidence collection strategy. Leona and Carl believed they were dealing with a confused old man. That perception was now my greatest weapon. They would speak freely around someone they considered mentally compromised. I slipped the phone into my shirt pocket, microphone positioned upward, and returned to the living room where they continued their whispered planning session. "Feeling better, Dad?" Leona looked up from a stack of papers they'd been reviewing, papers that definitely weren't wedding-related based on the legal letterhead I glimpsed. "Much better. Actually, I wanted to continue our conversation about the company." I settled back into my chair, adopting the tone of someone seeking reassurance. "Sometimes I think I'm getting too old for business. What will happen to the company when I can't handle the complexity anymore?" Carl leaned forward eagerly. "Don't worry, Arthur. Leona and I will help. I've studied all your contracts, the Morrison project, the Henderson development, even the equipment leasing arrangements with Caterpillar." The casual mention of specific contracts stunned me. Those files were locked in my office safe. How had he accessed them? "You know about the Henderson development?" I let my voice sound impressed rather than alarmed. "That's very complicated. The environmental permits alone." "Already reviewed them," Carl said proudly. "Plus the profit projections, the timeline for completion, everything. You've built an incredible company, but it could be even more profitable with proper management." Leona nodded enthusiastically. "Dad, maybe you should work less. We'll take care of everything. You've earned a rest." "Could you really manage such a large company?" I made my voice sound both hopeful and doubtful. "Of course! I even know buyers who are ready to pay a very good price." Carl's excitement was making him careless. "Consolidated Construction has been interested in your client list for years. They've offered $47 million for the whole operation." My blood turned to ice. $47 million was roughly 60% of the company's actual value. They were planning to sell my life's work at a devastating loss, probably taking a substantial finder's fee for themselves. $47 million, I repeated slowly, as if trying to process the number. "That sounds like a lot of money." "It is, Arthur, enough to keep you comfortable for the rest of your life." Carl's patronizing tone made me want to throw him through the window. "Leona and I would handle all the business details. You could relax, maybe do some traveling." "Where would I travel?" I asked, with the innocent curiosity of someone whose world was shrinking. "Somewhere warm," Leona suggested. "Maybe a nice assisted living community in Arizona. They have excellent facilities there." Assisted living. They were planning to warehouse me in some institutional setting while they looted my assets. The phone in my pocket captured every word of their casual discussion about destroying my independence. "That sounds lovely." I smiled vacantly while imagining their eventual imprisonment. "But what about my house? I've lived here for 35 years. "Don't worry about the house, Dad. We'll handle selling it." Leona's voice carried the patience of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. "These decisions are too complex for you to worry about anymore." Carl pulled out his phone and began scrolling through contacts. "Actually, I should call the evaluation specialist. Dr. Morrison said he could move your appointment to Tuesday if necessary. Dr. Morrison. They'd already arranged for my mental competency evaluation with a specific doctor, probably one they'd bought or pressured. The timeline was accelerating beyond even Henry's warnings. What evaluation? I asked, with perfectly feigned confusion. Just a routine checkup, Dad. Dr. Morrison specializes in age-related cognitive changes. Leona's euphemism was almost elegant. We want to make sure you're healthy. That's very thoughtful. I stood slowly, shuffling toward the kitchen like an old man needing tea. You two are such good children, taking care of everything. Behind me, I heard Carl dialing Dr. Morrison's number. The phone in my pocket captured every word as he discussed moving my cognitive evaluation to Tuesday morning, 2 days after the wedding. They weren't even waiting for the honeymoon to begin their assault. The kitchen provided perfect acoustics as I prepared another cup of tea with deliberately shaky hands. Their conversation carried clearly from the living room. Tuesday works perfectly, Carl said into his phone. Yes, the family is very concerned about his declining condition. Memory problems, confusion, difficulty with complex decisions. No, he won't resist. He trusts us completely. The water boiled as Leona added her voice to the planning. We should have the guardianship papers filed by Wednesday. Stephen said the court date could be as early as Friday if we present compelling medical evidence. 1 week. They were planning to strip away my independence, sell my company, and institutionalize me within 1 week of their wedding day. The audacity was breathtaking, but it was also their fatal mistake. They'd revealed their entire timeline, their methods, even their corrupt doctor's name. I returned to the living room carrying my tea with both hands, the picture of elderly frailty. I couldn't help but overhear, "You're arranging a doctor's appointment for me? Just a checkup, Dad." Leona's smile was radiant with false affection. "We love you so much. We want to make sure you're properly cared for." The recording app continued capturing evidence as I nodded gratefully, playing the role of a trusting father while my mind calculated the precise nature of their eventual downfall. They wanted to prove Arthur Welch was mentally incompetent? Tomorrow, at their wedding reception, they would discover exactly how sharp his mind really was. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that only comes after sleepless planning. I'd spent Sunday reviewing every recorded conversation, organizing documents, and preparing my counterattack with the methodical precision that had built Welch materials from nothing. Today was execution day. The drive to my office took 23 minutes through morning traffic. I carried 2 briefcases, one with the usual business documents, another with evidence that would destroy my daughter's future. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was driving to save my company from my own blood. My assistant Margaret, I'd named her after my late wife, looked up from her computer with professional concern. "Mr. Welch, I didn't expect you today. Isn't the wedding this weekend?" "Saturday evening, yes, but I have some urgent business to handle first." I unlocked my office door, already planning the morning's delicate operations. "Margaret, could you clear my schedule until noon? I have some sensitive calls to make." The first call went to Blackwood Investigations, a firm I'd used for employee background checks. "James, this is Arthur Welch. I need comprehensive financial background checks on 2 individuals, Carl Fraser and Dr. Morrison. Yes, I'll pay the rush charges." Within an hour, James called back with devastating information. Carl had gambling debts totaling $340,000 to 3 different casinos. Dr. Morrison had been investigated twice for insurance fraud, though never convicted. My daughter had chosen her conspirators poorly. The second call was more personal. "Margaret, I know this is short notice, but I'd like to invite some additional family members to Leona's wedding. Could you help me contact them?" "Of course, Mr. Welch. Who should I call?" "My sister Margaret in Phoenix, brother Robert in Chicago, all the cousins. I want the whole family there." I paused for effect. "This will be a very special celebration. They shouldn't miss it." Margaret's efficiency impressed me as always. Within 2 hours, she'd contacted 37 relatives across 6 states. Most were shocked by the last-minute invitation, but family loyalty trumped inconvenience. They would all attend. The third call required more delicate handling. "Thompson Audio Visual, this is Arthur Welch. I'm hosting a large family event this Saturday and need professional sound equipment. Yes, wireless microphones, a mixing board, speakers powerful enough for 200 guests. Money is no object." "What kind of event, Mr. Welch?" "A wedding reception. but I also want to give a very important speech. The whole family needs to hear every word clearly. By Wednesday afternoon, my trap was set with precision that would have impressed a military strategist. The venue had been expanded to accommodate 60 additional guests. Professional audio equipment was scheduled for delivery Saturday morning. Dr. Morrison's fraudulent background was documented. Carl's gambling debts were verified and photographed. Most importantly, I'd contacted Lawrence Chen, Minneapolis's most respected elder law attorney, to draft new legal documents. My will now left everything to charity, with explicit language stating that any attempts to challenge my mental competency would result in criminal prosecution for fraud. Thursday brought the final piece of my puzzle. Leona, I've been thinking about your wedding gift. She looked up from her laptop, probably reviewing guardianship documents. The earrings are beautiful, Dad. You don't need to give us anything else. Actually, I want to give a speech at the reception, a proper father of the bride speech about family, trust, and the future. I smiled with paternal warmth while watching her reaction. I've invited some additional family members too. Aunt Margaret, Uncle Robert, all the cousins. This should be a celebration the whole family remembers. Leona's face went pale. But Dad, we planned an intimate ceremony. Nonsense. This is my daughter's wedding. I want everyone to witness this momentous occasion. I patted her hand affectionately. Don't worry about the cost. I've already expanded the venue and arranged for professional audio equipment. Everyone will hear my speech perfectly. Carl appeared in the doorway, obviously having overheard our conversation. Arthur, maybe a smaller gathering would be less overwhelming for you? Overwhelming? This is the happiest day of my life. I stood and embraced them both with theatrical emotion. My daughter is marrying a wonderful man. The whole family will be together, and I get to share my thoughts about love, loyalty, and what family really means. What will you say in your speech? Leona asked weakly. Oh, I have so many stories to tell. About trust between family members, about honesty in relationships, about people who pretend to care while planning betrayal. I smiled benevolently. Don't worry, dear. I've been preparing for weeks. It will be a speech no one ever forgets. Carl gripped Leona's arm, both of them recognizing the threat they couldn't identify. Their wedding, intended as a celebration before my destruction, was about to become the stage for their public humiliation. The whole family will be there? Carl's voice carried barely controlled panic. Everyone important, I confirmed cheerfully. Aunts, uncles, cousins, business associates, even some old friends I haven't seen in years. We'll have nearly 200 guests to witness this special day. I walked to the window overlooking my garden, where Margaret had planted roses 30 years ago. Saturday evening, in front of everyone who mattered, I would prove that Arthur Welch's mind was sharp enough to destroy anyone foolish enough to betray him. The trap was set. The audience was confirmed. The evidence was prepared. All that remained was the execution. Riverview Banquet Hall stretched elegantly along the Mississippi's eastern bank, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the water I'd known since childhood. I arrived at precisely 2:06 p.m., carrying my briefcase and the Tiffany bag that had started this journey 8 days ago. The irony felt appropriate, presenting my daughter with $15,000 earrings before destroying her future. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white tablecloths and fresh flowers, creating the romantic atmosphere Leona had dreamed of for months. Wedding